Eun-soo is an aspiring writer. She has been nicknamed the zombie writer because of the amount of passion and skills she has kept into writing. She hopes to break through in her writing, and she has just taken an examination with one of her works, and she hopes to win. She stays in the same house as her parents, and they live on the 4th floor. The person who stays on the 5th floor makes some loud noises that disturb her, and she can't concentrate. Anytime the noise starts, she will hit a stick on the roof of her house, disturbing the person living on the 3rd floor. As she does that after checking for the result of her examination, however, the person on the 3rd floor calls her in anger, asking her to stop making that noise because it is disturbing her, and she has a child in the room. She is angry that she can't even get a breathing space. She opens her locker and sees all the bills she has to pay, then prays to God that she gets the work with the examination. She walks out of the house so she can concentrate better, and by the locker outside the house, she sees that an envelope is inside the locker of the occupant in room 501. She reads it to know the person's name, and she recalls that she had seen a strange man entering their building the night before and assumes it could be the occupant. She goes to a restaurant and calls the company that had organized the examination. She asks if the result has been released, and they say yes. When she checks, she sees she is not part of the successful candidates, and is angry. She bows her head in pain when her friend walks in and sees the result before calling her attention. He asks why she has come out since he knows she barely leaves the house, and she complains about her neighbor again. He suggests that she should report to the authorities, but she reminds him that she had done that earlier, but they claim no one lives in that room. When he asks about her result, she lies that it is not out, but he drags her laptop and sees she has failed. He jokes with her that she doesn't have to feel bad about failing because she has been failing constantly for a while. She returns home and the sound made by her neighbor gets louder, like they are dragging something. She looks through her door and sees her father leaving the restroom. She decides that she will visit the room and put up a notice that they should stop making noises. However, that night, she dreamt that she had gone there the next day, and she sneaked into the house and saw a wild animal. She wakes up and goes to school. Their teacher tries to tell them about what she thinks is a perfect storyline and how they can write about their environment. On break, she meets their teacher, and she talks about her neighbor again. Her teacher advises her that it is a good storyline, and she will write a perfect story if she writes about it because the person who won the last competition also wrote about his environment. She goes home, steals from her parents again, hoping to refund them, and then starts writing about her home. That night, she stays outside and watches as the strange man she assumes stays on that floor arrives. When the man enters the building, she follows him, and when she gets to his floor, she sees water leaking out of his room. The following day, her mother sees all her unpaid bills and confronts her. She tells her she will report her if she doesn't pay the bills before the end of the month, and reminds her of her promise that if her writing doesn't through that year, she will resign and do something else. Feeling disturbed, she calls her friend, Jang Ji-sung, and asks him to come and see her. She goes to room 501's car and tries to check what is inside. She finds a knife in the car and also a bottle of water. Before she leaves the car, the man arrives, and she hides inside the car. Ji-sung kept calling her repeatedly when he got to her house, but she couldn't pick up. The man finds out she is in his car, and as he packs to call her out, something falls from her hand. He slaps her and takes her to the police. Upon being released, he asks her what room she stays in and shakes her hand. She meets Ji-sung and tells him about the knife and the blood on the knife. She insists that she is sure something is wrong, and he is doing something, so she insists that they should stalk him. That day, they return home and take his phone bill. She browses the name on the bill but can't find anything in him. She browses the number of the room, and she realizes that there is a different name from the name of the occupant and the name on the phone bill. She goes to the building, and she sees some religious people knocking the man's door and asking him to open. Regardless, she refuses to back down despite advice from Ji-sung that the man may just be a worshipper of water without any issue. She insists that they should stalk the man, and since she can't drive, she persuades Ji-sung to follow her. The following morning, they set out to follow the strange man, but they lose him on the way as he takes a detour and passes another way. She remains obsessed with finding out who he is and what he is doing so she can write about him. When the man arrives at the house, he checks his car and sees what Eun-soo had forgotten in his car. He sees a lady drive into the park and walk into the building, and he intentionally uses his eyes to see the room she had entered and confirms she entered room 401. After losing the man that night, Eun-soo decides to put a tracker in the man's car, but when she searches for the prices of trackers, they are too expensive. Ji-sung advises her to use the type of trackers couples put on their phones. She downloads the tracker, puts it on the phone, and gums it under the man's car. That night, the strange man is seen performing rituals and making noises. The following day, the man comes to her house and meets her parents to return what she had forgotten in his car. He reports to her parents that he saw her inside his car. When she returns and finds him in front of her house, she enters the house and calls Ji-sung. Ji-sung advises her that the man probably returned the item to give her a warning, but she insists she isn't stopping, and she checks the tracker to see where he is. Without minding the warning, she goes with Ji-sung and follows the man. She sees he is at a church called Heavenly Father Religion, and she also follows him and sees him at the hospital. At the hospital, she sees him entering a ward and sees him with a child. He notices her, and she tries to leave, then enters the patient's ward to distract him. After he leaves, she meets Ji-sung and tells him to leave. She returns to the hospital and goes to the man's child's ward. She sees his picture with his child and sees him pouring water on the girl and praying that she recovers. Eun-soo screams for the nurses to save the girl. She goes to the church again and enters, but she leaves. She assumes that she is fighting a wrong battle, so she goes home. At home, her father gets angry at her for being caught in someone's car and gives her just that month to stop writing and find a job. She goes to take her phone from the man's car. However, when the man gets home, he goes to the groaning man in the room and sees the man's blood is almost entering the other floor, so he puts a mat. He enters his room and sees 2 different corpses whom he had kidnapped some days ago. He goes to Eun-soo's room and says she had lied to him about her room number, and she stays in room 401 and not 301. She asks why he had visited, and he claims he is just saying hi. He gives her a gift of grapefruits. She sees the signs of blood on her roof, and she calls the building owner, asking that she wants to rent that 501 room and she wants the number of the present squatter. She calls his number, but he doesn't pick up. She browses about the church too. She picks up her coat and goes to the church. Before going, she asks the security room about the owner of the room, Lee Kwang-nam, who hasn't been around. The man living in the room is a fisherman, and he is Kwang-nam's friend. She goes to the church, where the sister she meets says that they haven't met Kwang-nam in about a month, and he said he was traveling. She asks if Eun-soo is interested in their doctrine, and she shows her the scene of everyone pouring water, including her strange neighbor. She feels so awkward and tries to run away, but some guard refuses to let her go. Suddenly, Ji-sung comes in, and he leaves with her. She tells Ji-sung what she has found out, and insists that the noise started after Kwang-nam has disappeared. She suggests that they go to the police, but he reminds her that they have also committed the crime of stalking and others. He suggests that they stalk him again. She puts her phone under his car again, but when he comes to the car in the morning, the phone rings under the car and he checks the car, so he sees the phone, and he takes it along. They follow the car and see that he has gone fishing. They suspect that he is using his finger as bait. She pays the security guard to ask him what bait he is using, but when the security man goes to the man angrily leaves, and Ji-sung offers to follow him. He lays Ji-sung's ambush and hits him on his head. Hours pass by, and Eun-soo can't find Ji-sung. She calls him to no avail and asks the security man if there is another way to get out. The man says yes and says the strange man has gone since. She runs to the bush to find Ji-sung but finds blood around his phone. She screams as she goes to her car and keeps calling her phone with the strange man. Ji-sung recovers and tries to find the knife Eun-soo said was in the car. He uses the knife to cut his rope, but the man comes out and hits him. She tries to beg him to leave her friend, saying she won't report him, but he drops the phone and Ji-sung's body and returns home. Eun-soo uses the tracker on the phone to find where Ji-sung is. She takes him to the hospital and reports the murder to the police, but the officers say another murder has been reported in the same room. She rushes home and begs the police to break the man's door, but the officers refuse, so she runs to her room and uses a rope to jump into the man's room. She finds the 3 bodies in the room. The strange man recalls when he had brought drunk Kwang-nam back home. He had met Kwang-nam at the Heavenly Father religion and believed the Heavenly Father would heal his daughter. But Kwang-nam started telling him that the entire religion was fake and it was a lie. In pain, he attacked Kwang-nam and tied him in the house before he kidnapped the 2 other people. The man finds Eun-soo in the room and starts attacking her. She begs him to release her, saying she can help him, but he refuses until the police break down the door and he is arrested. Eventually, Eun-soo and Ji-sung recover, and she reveals that due to the incident, the church reached their downfall. Fortunately, the man's daughter starts recovering after her surgery. She concludes by declaring that the story isn't imaginative, and she had experienced it herself, and sometimes she still feels as if she is in the ice room, so she will make use of the experience to write a good story.